All right, so here we are underneath a 2004 Nissan Titan. This customer is complaining about shifting into gear or into reverse, that they have a popping noise. And then driving down the road, within every shift, they have a big bang underneath. So here we are at the drive shaft. This is the carrier bearing. We can see that the bushing is all blown out of the top side here. So they're hearing their drive shaft jump around. So we're going to go ahead and remove the drive shaft. We're also going to service some of these U-joints. There's 3 U-joints here. These U-joints are ungreasable. So we're going to put in ones that you can add grease to service, because you can see there's a lot of rust here. This guy pulls a boat and he's in and out of the water all the time. So we'll go ahead and remove the drive shaft. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark the drive shaft to the differential, so that once we put it back together, we'll have it in the exact same alignment from the rear end to the drive shaft. So if it did have any rust that built up and it was balanced in a certain direction over from wear, we'll put it back in the same spot. All right, so we're going to remove these nut and bolt here. They're 17 millimeter. So this is the piece we want to align this back up the same way. So we're just going to go ahead and give ourselves a marking. So we'll give some kind of a dot here and a dot here, and that's going to tell us that's our spot. Okay, so just going to give a little bit of a So we didn't really hit it too hard to kill it. We were just trying to give it a little bit of shock. It was basically stuck on this rust ring right here. All right, so now we're going to remove our carrier bearing. We have 2 studs that come up from right here. They have a 14 millimeter bolt on the end, so we'll go ahead and All right, so now we have that off. So we lift this up over the studs. Once we lift that up, this joint here will just pull out the back of the tranny, and then we'll go ahead and put it down on the ground. All right, and then we want to pull it straight back. And we'll go ahead and set it right on the ground. All right, so now that we have our drive shaft on the ground, the one thing that we want to do is we're going to have to mark this so we put it back in the same spot. So we'll mark these are the joints. There's 3 joints, and then we're going to remove this to get this piece off. This slips off here. So we'll go ahead and mark some of our joints now. So we're going to put a mark here and a mark here. So that'll tell us these 2 line up. Right, so then this piece is going to slip out of here too, so we want to give it a mark so we know that all these components are going to be on the top. You can see on this one here we have two marks we have to reference. You can see the difference, and one is by a bolt hole versus the other. So there is no way to question where your mark is. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take these clamps off right here. Oh, that was no good. Try not to mess that clip up too much, just in case we have a need to. All right, so now you can see it's coming apart there. All right, so we know that this slips out here, so when we go ahead and put it back in, it'll be the same. We can kind of see here, we'll give it another, we'll give this piece just one more mark just to, it's a little greasy. I'm going to etch this one. So basically I'm just making a scribe mark. So I have a scribe right here that I'll be able to see, and I have a scribe right here. So once I put these together, I'll know which, make sure that I'm on the right spline. That way, these are pretty far distance apart. This way is a more refined marking for the spline. We're going to be removing this piece here. Just see how easy it. If we can. Well, you can see what kind of. That joint was barely on. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off there. All right, so we had to get a little bit of a lip, and then finally could drive it off. Had a good angle there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do our joints before we put this back together. All right, so here is the end of our drive shaft with one of our U-joints. So we can already see we have it lined up. So when we put it back together, we put the cross in the right direction. So we're going to do this job here. This is a ball joint press. It can be used for U-joints, this ball joint press. We did a loaner rental from the local auto parts store, AutoZone. So they rent you the tool. This is, like I said, a ball joint press tool, but we're going to be using it as a U-joint tool. Now the first thing we're going to do here is we want to remove all of our clips. So what we're going to do here with the ball joint presses, this side's all cut out. The diameter is the same as a U-joint. We want to make sure that our U-joint cap slides in here, so we want to make it just on the outside. And then the other side will press the bearing or the joint forward. Okay, so now we have our old U-joint uninstalled. We're going to go ahead and clean up any, make sure we don't have any burrs for putting the new one in. All right, you see our alignment mark, so you definitely know if you had it on the wrong way. All right, so here's a U-joint supplied to us by Auto Parts Direct to You. Now these are the upgraded U-joints. The old one did not have a grease fitting on it at all. So what it came with from the factory with grease, that's what it has. This one has a Zerk fitting on it. When we place this in here, we're going to point the Zerk fitting forward so that we can get in there with our grease gun and fill it up. All right, so it really doesn't matter which one you start with here. We'll put it on the base first, or the shaft itself. So we'll go ahead and remove a cap. Now there's some needle bearings in here, So we want to be very careful not to get those needle bearings knocked out of there. So go ahead and we'll put our joint in. Then we push our joint all the way to one side, and we can put our cap back on. All right, so now we have it on the ground. I have a rubber dead blow hammer here. Just kind of so we're just walking the cap right on. All right, so we have the cap somewhat on. You can see I'm holding pressure upward so I don't kick it down and I mess those bearings up. Sometimes a bigger hammer. Okay, so we're flush on that side. So we want to just pick it up a little bit. We want to put our cap on the other side very carefully. So here we're almost on. This is where it starts to get a little tricky. You could get it a little messed up. If those bearings seem to come out of there, that's no good. If we hit it, we could jog it around. So we just want to be very careful when we're doing this side here. So I'm going to keep the joint centered between the two. Kind of do the same thing I did before. So you can see the joints walking its way in. Now we should have it pretty good between the two. Yep. So we'll go back to Alright, so our other side there. Alright, so we're both somewhat flush. Now you want to go down just far enough to see our ridge. Once we have our ridge, we can put our clip back in. So come back to the other side and we'll so you could also use your press to press them back in if you wanted to. Whatever you feel comfortable. All right, so just want to make sure that's set. There we go. And that one's set. So now we have that U-joint in. Now we want to do this side. All right, so there we have that joint. So we should have nice and free joints, no binding, not stiff, anything like that. All right, so there's our U-joint. All right, so now that we have that one done, we have 3 on this drive shaft in total. So we have our new carrier bearing, and then we have our new clamps for our bellow boot there. So we did have these marked too. So we were mark, we did scribe, and we scribe. So when we put this back together, our scribe marks are going to be right on each other. All right, so now we're going to put on our carrier bearing that we got from Auto Parts Direct to You. So this is a press fit. This bearing rides right here from this groove to this groove, and then this is another collar that would sit on the outside there. So it'll basically be like this. All right, so this one right here we want to put on, but the only surface of this whole bearing that we can actually apply a force to is going to be this inner bearing, because this inner bearing will be what slides over the shaft. If we press on the outside of this bearing or on this rubber, we could misalign the bearing and just destroy it before it's even in service. So there's installation tools and all this stuff. This is a piece of 1.5 inch fence post. It will fit right on top of that inner piece, and we should be able to slide right over the top there. That's our only issue there, is it doesn't quite make it over that, but we can at least get to that part. Have some other something or others. All right, so we'll go ahead, and this does have an arrow for the front. This will be the front. The other thing that this will do is it'll help us stay aligned as we go on. So we'll just kind of walk this real slow. We don't have to really hit it hard. All right, so now we've bottomed out the tool there. All right, so now we'll go ahead and put this piece on. We'll go ahead and just give it a couple more hits. We're pretty close here to what we looked like when we took it apart. Now you could tell that the tone was definitely different there. All right. All right, so now we have our mark here and our mark here. We have our boot that was over top of it. We'll go ahead and any kind of dirt or grease that we got stuck in our grease. We'll go ahead and get that out. We're going to go ahead and put some anti-seize. So we'll go ahead and put our boot on this side and kind of hold it back. All right, so you can see our scribe marks line back up. Oh, put this on the right way, didn't I? One side's not bigger than the other, is it? Yep. So one side is bigger than the other. Go ahead and do that again. All right, so now we're going to put our clamps back on. All right, so here, this is a special tool. These clamps here are used on CV joints and stuff like that. So this is basically, it pinches it together and then it squeezes the top down, so it tightens this joint and pulls it together. It also has 1/2 inch, so you could attach your 1/2 inch breaker bar to it and really apply some force to it. Go ahead, squeeze that down. All right, so that tightened our clamp up. All right, so now we have our clamps are tight. Now we're ready to reinstall our drive shaft. All right, so when we're going on, we want to put it first inside the transmission. Now there is no alignment for that side. All right, so we go up, in, make sure that our there we go. We're on our studs. All right, so now that we have the front on, now the back is where we need to align. So we want to rotate it until we find there was our original position. And we'll go ahead and put one of our bolts in so it doesn't fall down on us. All right. All right, so now we want to go ahead and put our nuts back on, holding our carrier bearing in. All right, so now we want to tighten up our drive shaft bolts. All right, so now we have our drive shaft installed. You can tell our joint is pretty secure now. All right, so what we're going to do is put her back down on the ground and take her for a test drive, and we should be done with this repair.